Good Thursday evening, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center with this live update. Taking a look at the current Doppler radar across the region, you can see some showers and thunderstorms as a story, especially as we look down toward Alachua County. I see southwestern Alachua County now under a significant weather advisory until 7:15 as we're seeing some gusty conditions down there. Nothing too significant, but we'll kind of go ahead and dive into that action right now for those of you tuning in from that area. So. Let's go ahead and see what we're looking at here on our other Doppler radar. You see this right around Archer here. We're going to look at some of the wind energy now, and you'll be able to see there's a little bit, but we're pretty far from the radar, so it's hard to get a good vantage point on this. But talking about winds there, 45 miles an hour, storm nearly stationary, heavy rainfall, minor flooding possibilities in that region there as well. So we'll keep our eyes on that action there west of Interstate 75. So just trying to give you a little perspective. Later ran up towards Stark. We had a flood warning. We still have a flood warning for parts of Clay, but the action's really falling apart as we look up toward that region in Duval. Another significant weather advisory as we get toward Brunswick. This one goes here until it looks like about 8 o'clock as the storming is really moving pretty slow in that area. And we're talking about maybe some localized flooding there and winds in that 45-mile-an-hour range or so up toward Glenn County, Georgia. So we're going to look at the velocity on this. You don't see too much wind energy, but further away from the radar site here, just like down toward Archer. So we'll keep our eyes on the strong thunderstorms that are going on right now as we look across North Florida, South Georgia. Now, as we kind of broaden the view back out again, I'll go ahead and see some other action. You see some lighter action down toward areas there as you look south from Albany toward areas like Cairo, also over toward Bainbridge, but nothing too significant at the present time. So that's some good news at least. We'll keep our eyes on it. Temperatures there low to mid 80s. You see some 70s on the board. We haven't had any severe weather in the traditional sense here today around the region. The flood warning I alluded to in Clay, but things have been relatively tame here again today as we look back toward yesterday. That was the case as well. I know we've had some strong thunderstorms move through some spots and cause some rumbles of thunder there, things like that. But in terms of getting those severe warnings, now tomorrow might get a little bit of an uptick in that. We'll just have to wait and see. It makes sense just based on some of the different scenarios here that we do see playing out in the model data. So we'll continue to watch and look here last 12 hours or so on the rainfall. You can see that we have seen quite a bit of rain in some spots despite the lack of severe weather. We had some of this activity coming a little bit earlier. As we look down towards Stark, you can see, I know where I'm at, we barely got anything, but you see western parts of Stark here getting on the road you take there, of course, as you go from Rayford to Stark or vice versa. We're talking about, of course, 16 there. You are seeing more rain in the toward that region, so something interesting to take note of as we're looking back at the last 12 hours. But you see other spots like, again, where I'm at, other spots like down toward Hampton, not as much in toward Hampton proper. So it kind of tells the story how you have hit and miss storms. And you might be saying, well, he's saying that nothing really happened and we got quite a bit of rain. Well, it's just a matter of your location here. It's just a matter of your location. And again, the storms weren't too potent overall, and that's the good news. Some lightning. I know I did hear a loud rumble of thunder in the distance earlier, but again, not much in certain locations as I've alluded to. And again, we didn't have the damaging wind potentials before we come about, and that's what prompts us to do thunderstorm warnings or large hail in excess of an inch in diameter. You see some more rain up toward Albany. Albany over 2 inches. They did have some flooding in toward our region, some minor flooding based on some social media reports there. So something that they had to take note of there in toward Dougherty County as well. You see Tallahassee was relatively tame. We'll kind of move it back over just for a second before we broaden that back out. So that's kind of giving you that overview. Now, as we take a look at some of those cameras, we'll start off with Tallahassee and the stadium camera here today. See what Leon County looks like right now. And you can see that Suntron, the sign there above the stadium at FSU. Another stop now on the tour will take you to the baseball grounds camera in toward Jacksonville. You see some rain on the camera lens there. So something to take heat of there in Duval County with some of that precipitation around as we've been talking about, but it's more light right now, and that's the good news. Things have calmed down there quite a bit from what we were seeing earlier in some spots in toward Duval County. Picked up a pretty good amount of rain. The Union County Emergency Management camera now I'll show you what's happening toward Lake Butler. And you see some clouds there in the distance, but you see that sun behind me again trying to peek on through there. Something kind of intriguing to see as we are looking across our region. So just kind of giving you a few different stops on the camera tour on this Thursday evening. Week timing kind of goes strange here. Has things quite a bit different than they normally are here as we're looking toward August with this sporting events and whatnot. But again, we are going to continue to look at the radar, see if anything intensifies toward Archer, toward Brunswick, any other areas as well. If anything develops that's severe, we'll let you know about it right here from the Weather Center. So just kind of stay tuned. If there's anything we're running to come on for, we will. Hopefully we won't, though. We'll watch toward tomorrow as well, as I've talked about. And now speaking of some other things, we're talking about the future. Now let's talk about the past here, because as we look here, 16 years ago today, we had Hurricane Charley here, and so let's go ahead and say what we're talking about. We're talking about that storm here as it moved across the state of Florida. You can see it on the mapping. It really had a significant, devastating impact toward Punta Gorda, for instance. Then it moved up toward areas like Lakeland there, and eventually getting off the coast here around Daytona Beach, Flagler Beach, getting into some of the action as well. So an interesting storm here as it strengthened quickly from a Cat 2 to a Cat 4, and it even shifted past there a little bit further off toward the east along the Florida coast. It's supposed to have a more northerly component there and come more from Tampa up to Stark even. That's like going to be a stronger storm down toward Tampa, maybe a Cat 1 or something like that toward Stark, but it ended up shifting there, and Stark was pretty much spared. But later in that season, 2004, was so busy. We had, of course, Francis, Jean, Ivan impacting areas as well. Francis and Jean down there, Ivan further off toward the west. So that 2004 hurricane season, looking back 16 years ago, at least we don't have anything to watch that's imminent like that today. That was so devastating, moving across the state of Florida. Again, a Cat 4 there. It impacted Orlando as well pretty significantly in toward central Florida. So just something to kind of touch on as we look back in toward history. Had another landfall as we look later toward the Carolinas, but the bigger story was Florida there being impacted. And talking about the tropics here, the current state of the tropics, we now have Tropical Storm Josephine there. We'll go ahead and say that again, Tropical Storm Josephine, as we are watching here. As we are going to continue to track the action, you do see maximum sustained winds at 45 miles per hour as the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. There's position around 5 o'clock. It's supposed to be a tropical storm for a while, and if you just looked at the 3-day here, you'd think this is a pretty ominous track, but as we kind of broaden the view out a little bit, you see a curvature here to the north. You see that track here also showing that strength that's going to be pretty low overall, as maybe a depressant even falling apart eventually. So a recurvature and low intensity, a good combination. Overall, not expecting any local impacts in our region, and that's the good news. We'll be watching for other storms though later in the season. One we're watching right now off the coast, system that does have, or at least on the coast, that you can kind of see it's right in that general area there. Haven't looked into it too much because this isn't going to be a big deal either, but 30% chance there of cyclone formation within 5 days. We're looking off the eastern coast of the United States, so we'll kind of watch, but that didn't have any impact there as we're looking toward our viewing area. As you kind of see it just moving on away there and moving further off into toward the Atlantic. So two systems out there that we're watching. One is Josephine, and the other here is we're looking toward the north. Just not too big of a deal overall, and that's the good news. At least things tame for now. We gotta watch. You can't let your guard down. The forecast is still for a high number of storms this hurricane season, so just be prepared here. Have that hurricane kit up to date. A high number of storms doesn't mean we'll get hit in North Florida, South Georgia. It just means that you need to be prepared, and there's a better chance of a storm hitting us in general because there's bigger odds of storms doing so with the higher number of them. That's just kind of probability in general if you think about it, but they can easily recurve, or you can have storms in an active season like 9 1992, Andrew comes to mind, that made landfall there in South Florida, and there were very few other storms. So it's just meaning that there's a greater chance of being hit because of more storms. Doesn't mean that we'll actually be hit in North Florida and South Georgia. Now here to look at that overall forecast, you see those rain chances here pretty high the next couple of days. So have that umbrella on hand, and when thunder roars, you want to go indoors. There are some signs that we might ultimately have a cool down as we get later on into the period, looking past the earlier on forecast. We look here at the 4-day, so that's something to kind of look forward to, maybe a little bit cooler or closer to average. So that'll be something, especially as we look up further north, some of our northwestern zones, it seems like, based on the overall pattern, the climatology there as we're comparing that. So again, there's your forecast. You see the rain chances falling off some, and then they fall off a little more toward the Tallahassee, Valdosta area, as sometimes when you have some of those temperatures there, which will ultimately fall down. Of course, they're warming up in the short term, as I've alluded to, but sometimes when you get cooler weather, that might kind of mean a slowing down there of some of those afternoon and evening storms, which will have less instability around here overall. So that would be a good sign here. Is hopefully we can get past this. I was doing some research here the other day, just broad research on my own here, looking at warnings, and generally you have about 5 to 15 more days here. Just looking past the last couple years there, you have about 5 to 15 more severe thunderstorm warning type days for the rest of the summer period ahead. So not too many more, so that's the good news, but we still have a little bit to get through. And sometimes when you have more thunderstorms like this, summer thunderstorms, that can kind of just show you that you're not going to be getting any tropical action, at least. So that's one good aspect of them, as you're seeing that tropical action, that action there during hurricane season staying away to an extent. And as we get over your radar scope computer, we'll show you what it shows right now. I do want to look at that storm down toward Archer again, as people may be watching from that region with an interest. We'll go ahead and pop that on right now. You'll be able to show you what is happening as we're looking toward Archer. You see this is hanging around, and I say it's not a very busy day, kind of tame, but in Archer you might not really think so right now, because over the last hour or so, you can see some spots we're kind of going on a rough estimates here. Some spots upwards of 3 inches in the last hour. That lightning is around, and that can just sometimes be the case. Even if you don't have severe weather, it can still be pretty nasty out there, and you can still have issues with lightning. You can still have issues there with the ponding of the water on roadways, some accidents possible, as you may be slipping and sliding there, unfortunately, on the road. So I just have to be really careful here as you're looking out and about. Looking towards Stark right now. Middleburg, you see light rain, not too big of a deal, so that's the good news. Brunswick, we're watching that action here as well. You see up toward the Country Club Estates, you're seeing some heavier action, a little bit of wind energy right on the line here. That catches my eye a little bit. Let's pop this on. We're seeing wind energy here and values to about 46 miles an hour or so, as we're looking right on the McIntosh-Glenn County line. We'll keep watching as the evening does progress to see exactly what comes out of that, but it should eventually get out of our area. Again, we'll be here if necessary with the latest information. I'll go ahead and come back on camera to wrap it up here, though, on your Thursday evening. Of course, if there's any severe weather here the rest of the weekend, and that we need a break in for, we will here as we do that with those conditions as they do warn. For now, though, I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great night and a great weekend.